Winden's Garden Center in Napa, and let's learn about some houseplants today.
All right, Sam, this place is beautiful. So this is your domain, right?
Yes, well, I am one of the caretakers, I should say. I can't claim everything. We have a whole team that works with this, but I manage it basically 4 days a week. This is my space to look after.
Is this your favorite space?
It is my favorite space.
Now, tell us about your home.
Well, my home is much smaller than this room, and it has well over 100 houseplants inside of it.
That's incredible.
And the thing is I really like propagation. That's
yes,
really one of my interests, and houseplants are really cooperative with that, so I keep making more.
Oh, how fun.
My coworkers benefit because then I am like, okay, does somebody want a plant? And they get one.
So do you do like water propagation, or do you do no?
I do both.
You
yeah,
do?
Water propagation is, for those of you who don't know, it's when you have a stem of a plant that roots pretty easily. You just cut it, you stick it in a jar of water, and then you give it several weeks, and hopefully you have roots. It's the easiest option for propagation you can probably do. Not all plants cooperate with that, but I'll do that for the things that will work with fine, or if I'm like, this is an experiment, I'm not really emotionally invested in this yet. But sometimes I'll do the whole setup with the rooting hormone and the like a humidity tray and everything.
Oh, wow.
But
gotta be in the mood.
Yeah, I gotta be in the mood, exactly.
Can you take us around a little bit, talk to us a little bit about the houseplants? It's that time of year where we are kind of getting a little quiet in our gardens outside. We're not doing too much, kind of wrapping it up, but I feel like houseplants are ramping up.
Yeah.
I'm getting excited about houseplants.
Well, right, that's the thing. As we turn inside, we are now focusing on our indoor experience, and if you want a bunch of green around you, you're like, oh wait, I should get some plants.
I should get some houseplants. All right, let's go around and let's look at everything.
Sure.
Maybe you can point out some of your favorites.
Yeah,
or
sure.
ones that you think we should know about.
Okay, well, sort of the intro, right? You've got your pothos or pothos. You know, pronunciations vary.
Right.
Just say it with confidence. That's what matters.
Nice. Good to hear that.
Nobody is going to say every plant word perfectly all the time. It
Right.
doesn't happen. But as long as the person on the other end of the conversation knows what you're talking about, you've done your job.
You've accomplished your goal.
Exactly.
Right.
So spider plants, pothos, those are sort of your starter houseplants, if you will.
Okay. So the ones that are
which
the easiest
these
to
guys
keep alive.
and those. Yeah, they both don't need a lot of water. They are pretty adaptable in varying light conditions, and they just keep making more of themselves, especially spider plants.
Yes, spider plant babies. I wonder if
Yeah.
you guys have one that we could show off.
I do believe we do.
Oh, you do. Look at that.
Yeah. So this is what a spider plant does on its flower stem. It'll send these long stems out, it'll have cute little tiny white flowers, and then when the flowers are done at the nodes, it will start producing a new plantlet.
Wow. And so what do you do to, like, I guess this is propagation, right?
So if you wanted to, you could take this, plant it in soil, leave it connected until the roots grow into the soil.
Okay.
You could just chop it and put it in soil and it would grow just fine. You could honestly probably chop it and stick it on top of water, like you know how you do with the toothpicks and the avocado,
Oh,
like
yeah.
to suspend it, and it'd
Yeah.
probably do fine with that too.
Oh, nice.
So-
So that's definitely a good one to start with. Can you, what is this one right here?
This is a vanilla orchid.
What?
I know, right?
Are you kidding?
This is actually the source of vanilla beans.
Vanilla beans.
Vanilla beans are the fruit of an orchid.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. It won't flower indoors,
Oh,
sadly.
Okay.
The vines need a lot of light and a lot of room to
Okay.
grow in order to get flowers.
Okay.
But
Oh,
they
man.
are really, really vigorous plants.
Oh,
They just want to climb and grow everywhere.
what if you put like a grow light on it? Would it flower maybe? Is that a
You know,
stretch?
that I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think also they like the high humidity and everything.
Yeah.
They're native to like tropical Mexico and Central America.
Okay.
So, but yeah, very
Wow.
cool.
Wow. That might have to go in my cart.
It's so much fun. And it's just like one of those things. It's like, oh, I have a coffee plant, I have a vanilla orchid. And then it's like, you just need a cacao plant, and then you've got the whole thing.
So these are one of my favorites.
Yes. So spathiphyllum or peace lily, they are really robust indoor plant. Even if you've neglected it to the point where it's not that happy looking, it'll still bounce back with the right attention. So pretty resilient. Beautiful, and they will flower pretty regularly.
Okay. Do they need any special care?
Brighter light and some fertilizer are always good additions, especially if you're really trying to promote more flowering. But also, as with a lot of other flowers in the garden, once the flower is spent, if you remove it, it doesn't, if you deadhead it, it doesn't trigger the fruit development response.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well that makes sense. So how do you know what is an old flower? The green ones?
So it's actually gonna be,
you probably don't have any of them here.
Yeah, you're almost gonna be looking for, it's easier to see on the anthuriums.
Well, show us one in an anthurium. So is anthuriums pretty similar to spathiphyllum?
They are. So both anthuriums and spathiphyllum and a lot of houseplants are all in the same family of plants. They're aroids, which is the Araceae. And that it's a really weird group of plants. It's often this strange order of plants that's mostly aquatics.
Oh.
And it's just this really diverse and strange lineage that luckily is predominantly tropical, predominantly understory plants.
Okay.
And is adaptable to humidity levels, so it makes them pretty good for indoor plants.
Right. Maybe especially in a bathroom.
Especially in a bathroom,
right?
Yeah. So I was kind of looking for an older flower on this, and technically it's an inflorescence.
Okay.
Because an inflorescence is a cluster of flowers versus an individual. So this one here is beginning to try to do fruit development.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So if you see your anthurium and it's starting to get weird lumps on it, that's the plant trying to make fruit.
Interesting.
So,
and a peace lily will do that?
Yeah, they may not, depending on how they're pollinized. Also, aroids will do funky things about whether they have female flowers at any given point or male flowers at any given point.
Okay.
Each plant has the ability to produce both male and female flowers, but whether or not they're doing so can depend on the age and the environment and all sorts of things.
If they're gonna make babies. So look at this one.
So that's a very fresh one.
Look at it, it's like all smooth, and then you come over here and you look at the older one. What? Oh,
and each of these little dots is a flower.
Oh my goodness.
So that's why it's an inflorescence. It's a compound flower because every single one of those dots is an individual flower.
Dang, that's interesting.
And all aroids have flowers or inflorescence like that.
Okay.
And so you've got, and it's, since it's fancy and its own thing, so you have the spadix, which is this piece, and then your spathe, which is what wraps around the spadix and protects it when it's
and that's
before it's
not
open.
A petal.
It's not a petal. It's technically, it's a modified bract, which is a modified leaf, and a petal is a modified leaf. So everything's a modified leaf, really.
Okay.
But yes, it is technically, it's not a petal because it's not connected to a single flower. It's connected to an inflorescence.
Got it. Interesting.
All the technical botanical terminology.
I don't know how you remember all of this. That's amazing. So these look like the plants that are really expensive.
Right, yeah. These are what we call the fancy plants.
So this is a Thai constellation.
That's a Thai constellation.
What makes it so expensive?
So, a few different things, right? So one thing is that these are pretty much all done with tissue culture, which means that you have a more reliable color patterning coming out from the plant. But it's a lot slower. Tissue culture, you take a leaf or a petiole or a node or whatever, you take a little piece of material and you put it in your nutrient substrate that it'll trigger the plant to make undifferentiated cells, so basically going back to like the stem cell situation.
Yeah.
And then it triggers the plant to grow a whole new plant from those undifferentiated cells. And it takes a while.
Yeah.
Because then you're literally creating a whole new plant from a piece of leaf.
Right.
And so then it has to grow up, and then you have to deflask it, and so now it's coming out of this beautiful sheltered environment into the, well, ideally another beautiful sheltered environment.
But maybe not
as
beautiful.
sheltered. And so then it has to grow up. And variegated plants, even plants that are vigorous growers, will grow more slowly than their all green counterparts.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because the variegation, they're lacking the chlorophyll.
Okay.
So the chlorophyll is the green pigment in the leaf. It is also what is responsible for capturing the solar energy to make sugars for the plant.
Oh.
Without chlorophyll in these parts of the leaf, this leaf does not produce it, doesn't do any photosynthesis, or at least not in these parts.
So it's like it's not eating.
So it's like it's not eating.
Okay.
This side of the leaf is eating for two.
Look at all the babies here. What are these?
Yeah, so these are peperomia,
Ooh.
which are fun because they are in the same plant family as black pepper.
Oh, funny.
So they actually have,
Oh, I love these.
find one with some good flowers.
Here, right here.
Yeah, so these are their inflorescence.
So just like you were talking about with the anthuriums.
It's a compound flower. Every little dot there is a flower.
Oh my goodness.
And if you kind of imagine it as, these don't really get pollinated in here, but if you kind of imagine them getting pollinated, they'll swell up to like small little berries all along that cluster.
Oh, okay.
And that's a black pepper fruit.
Oh, isn't that
That's what it'll look like
interesting?
before the peppercorns are taken
you can
out
see
and
those
ground
over
up.
there, too.
Yeah, exactly.
See if I can zoom in. Oh, that is so neat.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about these over here, these black ones.
Yeah, so those are the ZZs, and
These are good for darker
good
areas.
for low light, low input. This is one of those plants where they really would rather you forget about them between waterings.
Oh, okay.
Unless you're somebody who does like to look at their plants and not water them.
Okay.
Because there's some people who like to look at their plants and then they must water them if they look.
Yeah.
This is not one of those plants.
Okay. And why is that? Why do they not have to be watered so often?
So they're very low water use plants.
Okay.
So beyond just being drought tolerant, where drought tolerant plants in the landscape can be different from drought tolerant plants in the containers, because landscape plants can send their roots down deep.
Right.
Whereas container plants don't have that option. So what you really need for drought tolerant containers is low water use.
Okay.
Plants that don't actually use the water.
Okay.
So they're very succulent. They hold a lot of water in their tissues. They don't need, they're not pulling water through all the time.
Right.
They have, let me see, we got any good ones.
The little ball things.
They've got these, I'm not gonna be able to get that out without tearing.
I know what you're looking
Oh, here we go. So they've got these structures here, which are their corms. They're
Okay.
underground structures. A lot of plants have them in general, but aroids also do.
Okay.
And it's like a potato.
Okay.
Just don't eat it. But like from a plant's point of view, right? It's a storage organ. It's where it puts its extra sugars. It's where it stores water. It's where it puts everything it needs when it has the resources to make them, so that when it's in a situation where there are no more resources provided for it, it doesn't die.
Okay. So it's kind of like a emergency
Exactly.
stockpile.
So if you totally forget about your ZZ for a year, there might be some degradation of what's going on inside, but it may not be dead yet. They're really
They're good.
impressive plants.
Good plants. Good beginner plants and good lazy person plants.
Exactly.
I like it.
Yeah.
So what would you say, like say somebody came in here and wanted to get a gift for someone for the holidays, because we're at that time of year,
Yes.
right?
Yes, we are.
Which plant would you say this is the best plant to get as a gift?
Okay. It does kind of depend a little bit on your recipient's
Your
nature.
recipient knows nothing
Your
about
recipient
plants.
knows nothing about plants. All
I'm
right.
putting you on the spot,
That's
Sam.
fine. That's fine. Well, honestly, ZZs are great for that.
Okay.
Because all you have to do is tell them when the soil gets dry, water it.
Okay.
Put it anywhere as long as there's like at least one window.
Okay.
Somewhere in the room. You know?
Okay.
They're very tolerant of
abuse
and just less than ideal conditions. Let's call it that.
Okay.
So the ZZs are great. Snake plants can be really fun too.
Okay.
Maybe
don't give it to your mother-in-law, right?
Yeah.
'Cause what else is it called?
It's also called mother-in-law's tongue. It's actually not that sharp, but you know, unless you have that kind of relationship.
Right. So this is called a Sansevieria.
It is called a Sansevieria.
And this is one too?
These are all, yep, so it's a different species. So this species, this one, these are all the same species.
Okay.
So that's Sansevieria trifasciata, which is actually now Dracaena trifasciata, because Sansevierias are all now Dracaenas. They're nested within it.
What?
Yep. Yep.
Excuse me?
Yes. So they're
all right.
So they're still like their own recognized group. They're
Okay.
it's still a meaningful group, but it's found that it's not separate from Dracaena. It's nested within Dracaena.
Okay. All right. Way
So-
to confuse everything, plant people.
Yes, you can thank the taxonomist for that. But so these things are great. They're from like tropical Africa, like South-Saharan tropical Africa. And a lot of these are actually, you know, we can grow these in fairly low light. In their native habitat, they can actually handle some pretty intense light.
Oh.
And they can handle brighter light too, but you don't want to take a plant that's been in this sort of a greenhouse environment and just stick it out on your west-facing porch right away, because you'll just sunburn the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because each leaf is acclimated to the conditions that it is experiencing as it unfurled.
Right.
And so if you change the conditions really dramatically, none of your leaves are able to keep up.
Got it. Got it.
But these are in the wild, at least, and I've tried to find out a little bit more, but there's not always as much research on interior scape plants as I'd really like there to be.
Yep.
But these are, the Sansevieria trifasciata is a type of plant, or is a plant rather, that can do a type of photosynthesis called CAM photosynthesis.
Okay.
And CAM photosynthesis is like a time delay. What it does is that in the day, the pores are closed. It keeps the stomata closed. It doesn't do any gas exchange.
Okay.
But it still captures the energy from the light, and it stores the energy. But you have to allow for gas exchange in order for the carbon to be fixed into sugars.
Oh, okay.
Because it comes from the CO2 in the
For
environment.
the photosynthesis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at night, they open up their pores, water is now flowing, and they can do gas exchange with the atmosphere, get the CO2 into the leaf, and then use the energy that they stored from the day to fix the sugars.
So they only take up water at night.
Or rather, the water only moves at night.
Interesting. And why?
Because in its native habitat, it is in such hot, dry conditions for most of its existence that if it were to have its pores open during the day, it'd lose all its water. It would all just evaporate right out.
Oh,
so
okay.
CAM photosynthesis is common in like agaves and yuccas. It's a very it's developed multiple times over. It's in several groups of plants, but it's just one of those things where
it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But that means that you probably, especially when it's cooler, like don't give these a heavy water, especially in the morning.
In the morning. That would make no sense because it would just sit there and rot the roots.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So it's
wow.
Well, and like I feel like having that kind of knowledge, even if it's not really your passion, if you can get a little bit of that knowledge behind you, you're so much more well supported for taking care of this plant because you understand how it interacts with its native environment, native
100%.
systems.
Yeah.
And now you're taking it and putting it in this artificial system. So ideally knowing a little bit about what your artificial system is like. How warm is my house? How humid is it? What happens here? That's going to tell you how the plant will respond.
Right.
You can work on predicting that and adjusting to that and stuff. And it gives you another tool in your wheelhouse and for any plant, knowing where any plant comes from.
Yes. Okay, so Sam, we are in Van Winden's greenhouse right now, and it's pretty light in here. It's not like, you know, it's not like sunny, but it's definitely pretty light. Is this what these plants like?
Yeah, so for the most part, even plants that wouldn't mind darker conditions, bright indirect light will make them happy. They'll grow the fastest in it.
Okay. How do I get bright indirect light in my house?
Yeah, everybody's like, what does that mean?
Right.
Unfortunately, unless you have a light meter, it's difficult to quantify.
Right.
But right here, right now, I would say this is verging on medium because it's cloudy, the shades are all drawn.
Okay.
Bright does seem a little bit brighter than this.
Really?
And that's usually when you've got like direct sunlight around the room, but not necessarily moving over the plants itself.
Okay.
One way to sort of judge it, which I learned from the local orchid society, is like, so light for a phalaenopsis orchid is ideally if you put your hand between the plant and your light source, if you can see a clear outline of your hand, it's too bright.
It's too bright.
Your shadow's too distinct.
Oh.
Move it further away.
Oh, interesting.
The shadow should be vaguely opaque. And it shouldn't be like super highly defined.
Okay.
So,
but there should be a shadow.
But there should be a shadow.
Got it.
So that's kind of medium.
Oh, that's medium.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not bright indirect light.
Yeah.
That's medium.
So I mean, right now there are no shadows being cast.
Right. Okay.
So
maybe if we look really hard.
Yeah, exactly. Get a flashlight out. Oh, change it all up. If you have a window that receives morning light coming through it, if you're looking basically like, or any window honestly that has light directly coming through it, right outside the sunbeam, that's bright.
Okay. And that's where most of these plants will be the happiest.
Yeah. And a lot of the plants can handle darker than that. They'll just generally grow more slowly. They'll use less water. And if they're really struggling, they want more light, what they'll do is they'll stretch.
Okay.
Or etiolate is the technical term. And that's what happens when the stems between the leaves get longer without more leaves coming out.
So if you see that it looks like you have a very long stem with few leaves on it,
more light.
More light is what you need.
Yeah,
okay.
because what it's doing is pushing itself to try to find where the light is coming from.
Got it.
So.
Okay. Those of us who have houseplants have all experienced the gnats.
Yes.
Tell us about, I mean, you have 100 plants in your apartment.
Oh, yeah.
Do you get gnats, fungus gnats in your plants?
So my solution to fungus gnats, which I am now a diehard believer in, is mosquito bits.
Okay.
So fungus gnats, they're exactly what it sounds like. They're very, very small flies that the larvae live in the soil.
Gross.
And they consume organic matter, but they're very tiny. They're not going to like actually kill your plant. They can't eat that much.
They're more of a nuisance?
They're more of a nuisance because every time you brush across the plant or hit a pot or whatever, you end up with this cloud of little black flies, and nobody likes that.
No, they get in your nose.
Yeah,
and it's disgusting.
It's very frustrating. Or you're sitting in bed with your phone on and they just keep attacking your phone screen.
Yep. I've definitely experienced that a time or two.
Yes, so you're like, okay, it's time for the mosquito bits, and that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So the mosquito bits, they're a type of BT.
Okay.
And they are effective against fly larvae. Okay. And so you can either make a tea out of them. Go the simplest route, and I just put a little sprinkle on the top of each pot and water it in. Okay. And I've done that, and it basically eliminated my fungus gnat issue.
Do you do that with all your plants, like just proactively?
I haven't been doing it proactively. That's not a bad idea, especially if the environment from where you procured your plant might seem like it's got a little bit of an issue going on.
Yep.
But
I have not seen a single pest in this. This is a very clean greenhouse, by the way.
So you can totally do it preemptively, especially because you need so little of it. If you're buying a whole bag of it, you're gonna have it forever.
For a long time. I think I've only ever bought one thing of mosquito bits.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's been years.
Exactly.
I wonder if it expires. I don't even know.
You know, I don't think so, as long as it's not like out in sunlight where
Okay.
like UV could degrade it.
Okay.
Because basically what it is it's like dormant cultures of bacteria.
Okay.
So as
And
long
the
as
and the
then
water
heat. Yeah, and then the
activates
water will
them.
activate it. So as long as
Okay.
it's not getting too hot or in sun, should be
Okay. Good to know. Any other tips for houseplant lovers? 101 tips. 101 tip.
So for watering, 'cause
Okay.
that's everybody's got questions about watering.
Yes.
And concerns.
Yes.
So what we do in here, because of the volume and our equipment, I water with the hose.
Oh, okay.
You know, I'll pull the hose out. I don't have, unless it's in the summer, I don't have it going constantly.
Okay.
I do pretty directed spot waters.
Okay.
Especially important in the winter because things are not going to be using the same amount of water as they do in the
Right.
summer. And last winter I killed all my Kentia palms because I watered a little bit too much.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't keep my house warm enough in conjunction.
Oh,
Like if I
got
had
it.
my heat bumped up, I think I probably would have been okay.
Right.
But then who knows what I would have paid PG&E.
Right.
So.
Yes. So about like say now this
Mm-hmm.
time of year, what is it? End of November. How many days do you water every day? Do you water?
So in here we'll check every day.
Check.
Most of them are not going to need water every day. There's
Okay.
a few things that are really thirsty, and even if they don't look like they need water now at 10 a.m., if I don't water them at 3 p.m., they're going to be wilting.
Are you
So
talking about a maidenhair fern?
I'm actually talking about the zebra plant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Zebra plants, very thirsty plants.
Interesting.
They
Okay.
have really big leaves. They have really big leaves. If you look at them, like relative to the whole plant, they're huge. And they just pull water right through.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
So, but yes, maidenhair ferns. Ferns in general like to stay moist. If you're the type of person to remember to refill your self-watering pot, self-watering pots can be really nice for
Okay.
ferns.
All right.
I sometimes forget that to put water in the self-watering pot, so that
Yeah.
it only does me so much good. But yeah, ferns generally like to stay moist. They generally like a little bit of extra humidity if they can be around somewhere like that. But other things like the snake plants, like the ZZs, like a lot of the aeroids, honestly, the monsteras and philodendrons, they generally want to hit like just about dry
Okay.
and then get water.
And do you do the where you stick your finger in the soil?
I will.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah,
How you
I'll,
check it?
I'll do that. Some people really like their moisture meters, and I think that's a great tool, just as long as you understand that the moisture meter calibration is very iffy.
Okay.
So you have to know how your tool responds.
Okay.
I would definitely practice a little, like, this is a pot of very moist soil. What does my moisture meter read?
Oh,
This is a pot
okay.
of very dry soil. What does it read?
That is a
Because-
good tip.
Because
Yeah.
who knows really what that meter's been calibrated for.
Okay.
And that also tells you, if I have a reading of 4, what does that soil actually look like?
Right,
Versus a reading of 1 or something.
Yes. Okay. So that's interesting.
Yeah. But for what I'll do at home, I have a watering can. I don't take my plants to the sink. There are too many plants to take to the sink.
You don't want to take 100 plants to the sink,
One by one. And also a good amount of those are large trees.
Oh, okay.
So I have several plants that are in 5 gallons or above.
So you live in a jungle.
I do live in a jungle.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's instead of taking the plants to the sink, it's walking back and forth with the sink to and from the sink with a watering can.
Got it.
I will top water most stuff, but I don't water very heavily when I water at home.
Oh.
And so sometimes I'll do a top water and then come back around and then fill the saucer up from the bottom,
Interesting.
so that I'm hoping
it
to get
from both
water
sides. Yeah.
to reach into the middle.
Interesting. I haven't heard that.
And it's kind of, you find out what works for you. But the thing about that, because sometimes if you only bottom water, you end up with a salt crust on top.
Oh.
Because what happens is you're adding water from the bottom, and unless you are using distilled water, which don't use distilled water, it's not worth it.
Don't bother. I'm behind the camera shaking my head like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, no. Unless you're using distilled water, your water has dissolved salts.
Right.
And what will happen is that when you bottom water only, the soil will absorb the water with those salts, and then as the water kind of gets pulled through the soil column to evaporate out, those salts get left behind.
Got it. And that's probably not good for the plant.
It's not ideal because it does create like a bit of a saltier system. So one thing that you can do is then to take water, and then you would do what you'd call a leaching flush. And so you would water from the top. This you would have to do in the sink or not in your placement. But basically water it until you have water draining through the pot so much that you've washed the salt out.
Okay. So that's how I normally water my plants, like pretty much every time.
Is to do the big deep flush?
Yeah. Is that a problem or is that okay?
So it's the only downside to that is if you're not fertilizing, you're stripping nutrients out of your soil.
Okay.
So you could do that in conjunction with a granular fertilizer. So every time you water, a little bit more is dissolved and leached into the soil.
Okay.
You could also do that kind of watering with a water-soluble fertilizer.
Okay.
And so I know for orchids, and I don't know if this is for all houseplants, because again, the research on there is just not all there.
Well,
I need more.
Sam, horticulturist. We know what your next job needs to be.
But something with orchid growers is they have a motto about fertilizing, and that's weekly, weekly. So doing a week formulation of fertilizer on a weekly basis.
Got it.
And for orchids, what they say is that when you're using like a liquid fertilizer, it absorbs, especially because the orchids with those aerial roots, they have really spongy tissues so that they can absorb things quickly.
Okay.
According to them, they can absorb fertilizer, like most of what they'll get out of that fertilizer within like 20 minutes.
Oh, interesting.
Now, I have no idea how universally that applies to other container plants. But I was so fascinated when I heard that statement, and I'm like,
I know your next experiment.
Exactly. So what some people will do for like their orchids is that they'll water them with their fertilizer water, let it sit half an hour, and then actually go back and do a flush.
Oh, interesting.
So,
because the plant's already
absorbed
taken it all
yeah.
up.
I don't know. My guess is that other plants don't absorb it quite as quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably
There's so much
variable.
variation. Yeah.
But that's a very easy experiment you could do in your have a control, right?
Yeah, just kidding.
Just kind of pushing you, Sam. All right. Well, this is wonderful. What a fun place to come and visit, especially this time of year. And if you come to Van Winden's and you find Sam, just drag Sam in here and say, talk to me about the plants, and you will learn a lot, I promise. Yep. All right, everyone. So if you want to come on a cold, dreary day and get some nice life and greenery around you, come to Van Winden's, the greenhouse, really all year round, because this is a great place. And Sam, you are one of the most knowledgeable people, especially about houseplants. So thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Bye.